Good morning and welcome and thanks. Tom, Gracie, Cordell, glad to see that you are here. We waited just a few minutes to make sure we gave people a chance to get on board and that we had our technical details right. My name is Nancy Turbak Berry. I chair the Freedom Coalition, the group of South Dakota citizens that are advocating the passage of the Freedom Amendment, Amendment G, to restore Roe versus Wade and eliminate the abortion ban that South Dakota has been living under for the last 2+ years. I'm happy today to announce another group joining the coalition, and the new group is the Lawyers for Freedom Amendment G, and the Lawyers group is being chaired by two friends of mine who, like me, are seasoned trial lawyers. Stephanie Pochop from Gregory and Renae Christensen from Sioux Falls. They're co-chairing the Lawyer Freedom Group. And I know they've been, they got started a little while ago, and they've already been in contact with attorneys. They've got a core group of lawyers who've agreed to be part of the Lawyers for Freedom. And I will invite them to tell you a little bit more about themselves, why they're involved in this fight, and what they hope lawyers will add to the campaign that ultimately will see Amendment G passed in the fall. Steph, are you willing to kick it off?
Sure. Good morning. My name is Stephanie Pochop. I have my own law practice, Johnson, Pochop, and Bartling, which is located in both Gregory and Sioux Falls. And the focus of my practice is in the area of civil rights enforcement. So supporting Amendment G is a pretty natural choice for me. I'll turn it over to Renae just for your introduction, Renae, and then we can talk about why we're motivated and what we think lawyers can do.
Sure. I'm Renae Christensen, and I practice in Sioux Falls with my son. I do garden variety, personal injury claims, a lot of Social Security, disability, and work injuries. I was very pleased to be asked to help with the a lawyers committee in particular, and I look forward to having conversations and intelligent and rational discussions about maintaining our freedoms.
Renae, you want to say a little bit more about that, Renae? I mean, I know each of us comes to this from different backgrounds and maybe prioritizing different things, but speak a little bit, if you will, about philosophically as an attorney, why you see this as a freedom amendment.
It's a freedom amendment. I would make no mistake about it. This is a slippery slope. If the government is intending on legislating what we can do with our own personal bodies, that is going to give them access to our personal lives in an unbelievable way, that from reviewing our medical records, maybe taking testimony from our own physicians, it's an incredible, intrusive a way about going about all of this. It's not acceptable.
Stephanie, you're one of the probably a handful of civil rights lawyers in South Dakota. I know most of us aren't quite brave enough to get into that arena. Talk a little bit about, from the standpoint of civil rights, to the extent to which that informs your positions and your willingness to be involved and outspoken on this.
Well, I support the right to abortion because I support human rights. And I particularly support the reasonable rights to abortion guaranteed by Amendment G because I'm opposed to women being forced to carry children to term, because I support and often work for victims of sexual assault, rape, and incest. And it infuriates me when I hear people so easily talking about that it really won't be a problem for those people. All they have to do is get through their pregnancy and they can give the child up for adoption. I think that's just so callous and so uneducated and just harsh about the actual lifetime effects of being subject to rape, whether it's by a family member, a stranger, or a date rape, it really doesn't matter. I just think it's so it's just callous and mean-spirited about how people are traumatized, not just physically but emotionally, for the rest of their lives when something like that happens. And it happens a lot in South Dakota. Like I saw a statistic from the South Dakota Department of Health that says there are a minimum of 450 to 500 rapes reported each year. And that doesn't count that's in South Dakota, to South Dakota law enforcement. That doesn't count what happens on our reservation to our reservation girls and women, and frankly boys and men as well. What it really doesn't count is the number of people who don't report and who just suffer in silence, sometimes for years, about what has happened to them. So I'm really, really motivated to support Amendment G to help people restore their right to abortion that existed for the last 50 years because of that. Also, I trust doctors. I trust South Dakota doctors. I think South Dakota doctors are also motivated to make sure that they are going to provide the best, safest, and determined care for their female patients. And finally, I just basically trust women to know what's best for their bodies, for their lives, and for their families.
As you've approached lawyers about this, what kind of a reaction have you gotten when you ask for other lawyers to help?
Oh, like I've not only approached lawyers to help, I've had people just kind of call me. I guess I've been out in this space supporting reproductive rights for quite a while, and I'm kind of a strong cup of coffee and not a wallflower, shall we say. So I have had lawyers actually contacting me to say, what can we do? And frankly, what we can do is form a group and work together. I think it takes really a group to reach out to people in our communities. A lot of us are people who represent school boards, represent our local hospitals, represent our local municipalities. And I just think like it's really important for lawyers to help clear up some of the misconceptions about what Amendment G is promising to enforce for freedom of the right to choose. And like, who better than lawyers to say how laws will affect your family, yourself, and your community? I mean, that's what we do.
Renae, what are your thoughts about that?
I too have been contacted by attorneys seeing what can they do to become involved. And Stephanie's right. I mean, we as lawyers, we read statutes. We're so familiar with how the legislative process works. So it's a natural extension of our professional skills. And so I think that it is just a good fit for our profession to be involved in.
Are you welcoming any attorneys from throughout the state that want to get involved to join?
I didn't quite hear you, Nancy.
Sorry. And my tech guy is supposed to bring me a new mic. I know I'm always muffled, which probably like you two, there have been people over the course of my career that would have loved to muffle me all the time. But is anybody, any attorney in South Dakota welcome to join?
Absolutely. Like we've put out the call. We want people to know that there's an opportunity to work together in a group to support Amendment G through Lawyers for Freedom. I mean, honestly, I could belong to a number of those groups, Nancy. I could belong to Women for Freedom. I could belong to Moms for Freedom. I could belong to Grandmas for Freedom. I could belong to amateur watercolorists for freedom. But I think I'm probably most effective working in a group of other lawyers because of the experience that people like Renae and I have, working for people who've had their rights infringed and who suffer because of a result. Like, those people aren't theoretical to me. Those are people who come and sit in my office and cry. And like, when you've had that, when you've had that personal experience with like being on that journey and trying to explain like what the law is, and like sometimes people are like, that is not fair. And Amendment G is designed to restore some ability to say it is, it's fair. What we have right now is radical and unfair, in my opinion.
All right, I'm going to invite any of our guests from the media to ask questions of us if they have any. Tom, Gracie, Cordell, anybody have something in particular you'd like any of us to respond to?
So I was hoping to discuss just kind of the logistics of this moving forward. There's talk that essentially that if this gets put on the ballot and gets voted on, that the Secretary of State could essentially just say that we're not counting these votes. Is that part of the reason as to why we're bringing additional lawyers into this fight? And if so, are you guys kind of gearing up to fight back against something like that?
Well, no, this group was starting to work before we ever heard of that novel argument by the LDF, which I think just showed up a few days ago. And our involvement as lawyers will not be directly in the litigation that's pending between LDF and Dakotans for Health. We are more of a community-based group, and Stephanie's out in Gregory, and she's probably the most authoritative person in that area to be able to talk about the amendment and how it parallels Roe versus Wade and what it will and will not do. And so that our expectation is that the Lawyers for Freedom group will be encouraging other lawyers to get involved, making sure everybody is informed about how the amendment reads and its basically identity to Roe versus Wade, and then be able to talk in their communities and their families with friends to make sure we get an authoritative and fact-based discussion out. As to the pending litigation, Jim Leach, an attorney from Rapid City, is handling that and will continue to handle that. I smiled a little when you said proclamation. Yeah, it looks like the amendment's going to be on the ballot. I mean, I don't see any way that a court order would come out before August 13th. The amendment will be on the ballot. I am not firsthand involved in that litigation. I have been watching it closely, and I am a 43-year litigator. And I guess all I would say is that the suggestion that a legal relief would be for the Secretary of State to issue a proclamation that votes don't count is novel at best. I don't think you'll find any place in the law where that's justified. But anything further about that litigation, I'd have to refer to Jim Leach or Rick Weiland.
Just to
DJ,
follow up on
welcome. I'm sorry, go ahead, Steph. I talked over you.
Follow up on that a little, Nancy. Like, it isn't my job and it isn't my training or my practice. When people come into my office, they come in for my legal advice and my specific help to them about their particular issues. And it isn't something that like the Lawyers for Freedom isn't designed to go out and tell all our clients what they should do or how they should vote. I mean, that's kind of the opposite of freedom. But as a person who does a lot of mentorship for lawyers around South Dakota, I've been the president of the South Dakota State Bar. I just know that one reason why we think it's really important, like, for example, to have Project Rural Practice so that there's at least a lawyer in every community or every county is kind of our hope, is because like, we're a really good messenger for the community about what South Dakota law is. And like, there's just a lot of lot of folks float around on Facebook and a lot of conspiracy theories. And like, I think I hope that lawyers still carry enough water and trust among members of the public that we can go say, this is what Amendment G does. Amendment G restores the Roe versus Wade rights that have existed for the last 50 years. It's not new, it's not extreme, it's not wild. It's just restoring your Roe versus Wade rights. And, the people have specific questions, like just to say, like, hey, ask a lawyer. What we do is read statutes and cases interpreting them.
Anybody else?
I do have another question, but I don't want to jump in front of anybody if they have a question as well.
Go ahead.
Do we have any sort of legal precedents in the state of South Dakota where we see challenges to how ballot signatures were gathered? Has anything like that been challenged before? I've never been in a room with this many lawyers, so this is a perfect time to ask.
Well, and unfortunately, not one of us is an election law lawyer, which is part of why we're not having the litigation over the petitions. I think the answer to that is yes, but I couldn't tell you any further than that. But there have been petition ballot challenges in the past, but I'm just not familiar enough with any of the details to be able to talk intelligently about it. And I doubt that Renae or Stephanie is either. No.
I'm not. It's just another reason that I'm very motivated to support Amendment G, because like South Dakota voters have had this particular issue on the ballot before and have expressed a pretty strong opinion about wanting to make sure that women and girls can exercise the right to abortion. And I just, I feel like, I personally feel like a lot of times our legislators just don't want to listen to what our voters have to say. So
Well, that's a good point, Steph. I mean, we maybe don't know any of the details of prior ballot challenges, but we do know what happened in 2006 and 2008. And Stephanie's absolutely right that that the voters make it pretty clear what they want, and then the legislature does something other. And unfortunately, some of those legislators are themselves attorneys and have their own personal or religious beliefs that cause them to try to impose the law on everybody else, contrary to what the voters have said.
I don't have any other questions. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Anybody else? Anything that you'd like us to address that we haven't? Okay, well, I think you all should have gotten something from Adam or Rick or the Dakotans for Freedom, maybe laying out our thoughts a little more in a little more detail. So you've got that. And as always, you're always free to contact me afterwards if you'd like to talk further. I just want to thank Renae and Stephanie both for being here this morning. They're both busy. I'm mostly retired, but these women are full-time attorneys working very hard every day, all day. And I'm so grateful that they took time today and that they're taking time between now and November to help us get this amendment passed. Nice to see you, ladies. Thank you, everybody.
Stephanie, could you just pronounce your last name real quick for me?
Sure. It's Pochop. It's like a lot of people pronounce it Pochop, and frankly, I've been called a lot worse than either of those two versions. Yeah, it's a good old West River Bohemian name.
Perfect. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.